And the final thing we're going to talk about in this video is the metric system. So in the previous section, we were talking about conversions, and we did a few conversions in terms of metric. However, I realized that not everybody remembers all these metric prefixes, so let's do a quick little review of them. Now, a few things. There are actually a lot more metric prefixes than most people realize. Most folks are used to just these ones right here. So these down to maybe say Milli. Now, that's the most common, especially with these. Now, with Giga and Tera, most people know this from computer language. For example, gigabyte and terabyte, and of course, megabyte, kilobyte, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But these metric prefixes, they're actually a lot more. We even have things like peta, exa, zeta, iota. I think iota is my favorite. But we don't need to know all of these. So for grade 11, I expect students to know this range right here. And that is from tera down to nano. So these metric prefixes apply to different base units. So for example, for distance or lengths, the base unit would be meters. So you would have meters, decimeters, centimeters, millimeters, etc., or kilometers. For volume, liters. So you would have milliliters, centiliters, kiloliters, etc. For masses, we have then the gram. So we have the centigram, milligram, microgram, kilogram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what you have to know are the relationships here. Now, let's take a look specifically. If you look in this range here between kilo and milli, the jumps here are only by a factor of 10. So it jumps by 10 here. So each of these is a jump of 10. Going in the opposite direction, there also jumps by 10, but here you divide by 10. So this is your base unit. Deca is 10 times bigger. Hecto is 10 times bigger than that. Kilo is 10 times bigger than that, and that's how it grows. Now, when you go smaller, deci is a tenth. Centi is a hundredth. Milli is a thousandth. And if you have a hard time remembering that, especially deca versus deci, there are a couple of ways that you can actually remember this. For example, a decade is a group of 10 years, where the decimal system is based on tenths. Also, interesting little fun fact, when you look at deci, another word, the word decimate, has to do with literally a tenth. The definition for that has a quite interesting history, has to do with Roman discipline in the military. But the other fun one is December. In fact, the months are kind of related to this. So you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, December is the 12th month. What does that have to do with 10? Well, December actually used to be the 10th month. So December was the 10th month. November used to be the 9th month. And 9 in Italian, for example, is nove. October, as in octopus. Octagon, 8. September, sept, 7th. So these names actually had significance. But that changed when July, named after Julius Caesar, and August, named after Augustus Caesar, was added to the calendar, which shifted all of these months by 2. So they know their names no longer make sense, but historically they once did. Fun facts. Anyway, back to what we were discussing. So when we talk about the jumps between millimeters and up to kilometers, these are all, as I said, in this range here, it's by 10. However, once you get outside of this range here, then the jumps go by 1,000. So mega is 1,000 times bigger than a kilo. And then that's times 1,000 times 1,000 as well. And then, of course, when you go the other way, here it's divide by 1,000. So it's 1,000 times smaller each time. So the expectation for grade 11 is that you understand what the jumps are from, you have memorized nano all the way up to tera. So at first, that looks like a lot of stuff to memorize. You should know most of them, but I have a better way of representing this. So here I have a metric conversions chart. And these headings here represent all the headings that I expect you folks to have memorized in short order. So let me show you how this works. So this is your base unit. So your base unit would be, again, something like meters or liters, grams, that sort of thing. Now the base unit is always just 1, or your 10 to the 0. So this is your ones column, all right, or 10 to the 0. Now your deci is going to be a tenth, so that's 10 to the negative 1. Centi is 10 to the negative 2. Now, when we talk about centi, centi is, there are 100 centimeters in a meter. Another way to remember that is the word century. There are 100 years in a century, or the other one, percent. Now, we usually write it like this, but if you think about it, it's really a compound word, per 100, for every 100%. Continuing on, then we get into the milli, which is 10 to the negative 3. And 1,000 in French is mille, right? So millimeter. Now, it skips. There are no names for these columns here. They exist, there's just no name for them. Now, micro is times 10 to the negative 6, or millionth, micro, millionth. 10 to the negative 7, 10 to the negative 8, and then nano is 10 to the negative 9. Going the other way, deca, so that would be 10 to the 1 for 10. Hecto, 10 to the 2, 100. Kilo, 10 to the 3, 1,000. No name for this column. And mega is 10 to the 6. Mega is millions versus micro, which is millionths. So micro is very small, mega is very big. And then continuing, no names for these columns, but that's 10 to the 7. That would be 10 to 8. And giga is 10 to the 9. Giga stands for billions, where nano stands for billionths. So giga, billions, nano, billionths. Next column is 10 to the 10, 10 to the 11, and tera is 10 to the 12. And that's trillions. All right, so that's all fine and well. So the question is, how do we work with this? And how do we use this chart to help us do a conversion? Okay, so let's start off with a basic question. So let's say we wanted to figure out the following. Let's say we wanted to convert 37.2 meters, and we want to convert that to millimeters. All right, so first thing we do is we locate where meters would be. Well, meters would be our base unit, all right? So you place the decimal point right here, and then you fill in the number, 372. Now, we want to go down to millimeters. So millimeters would be the metric prefix M. So then what we do is we shift the decimal, find this column, and place the decimal there. And now you take this number and you just fill in. And we add 2 placeholders, and therefore our final answer is 37,200 millimeters. Let's do another example. So let's say we want to do 0.00754 kilometers, and we want to convert that into, let's say, micrometers. So we want to convert this kilometers into micrometers. All right. Well, again, step number 1, we have to go to the kilometers column. So that would be this one right here. All right. Next step, put that original decimal place right there, and then fill in the numbers. So we have 0.00754. So there's our original in kilometers. All right. Next is we need to figure out the position of micro. So micro is over there, and then we place the decimal place at the end of the micro column. And then what you do is you copy only the significant figures, just the significant figures, because these zeros here, again, are placeholders. So they're not part of the measurement. So 7, 5, 4, and then fill in with more placeholders. And there's your answer, 7,540,000 micrometers. And this tool is a very convenient tool for figuring out how to do metric conversions simply.